My name is Bubba Taylor. My family worked on a plantation in South Carolina for many years. My great-grandfather was taken from his homeland and forced into slavery when he was only 15 years old. Unlike so many other families I've known, most of my family stayed working on the same plantation. Having each other was about the only thing that kept us going during the awful years we endured without the opportunity to even be called a person. We were lucky enough to have a decent master. He didn't beat us too much and let us marry. A lot of the slaves didn't like my mama too much, but I didn't find out why until I was older. One day, a black man came to visit his cousin, a slave on our plantation. When he saw me, he looked confused. Later that day, when I returned to our hut, the man was there talking to my mama. After he left, she sat me down and she told me she had something to tell me. I always thought that my papa had been sold to another master before I was born. Turns out I was wrong. My mama told me the master had took a liking to her and spent a lot of time with her. One day, they were alone in the house and something happened. Even though Mama wanted it, she felt like it was wrong and she tried to hide it. She told everyone that my papa was one of the slaves who had just been sold to a new master from Georgia. I always thought my skin looked different from everyone else, but I never fully understood. The free man that came to visit told my mama that because I was light-skinned, I could be freed. At first she didn't understand how, but then he explained to her that the courts were freeing slaves who looked to be of mixed ancestry, like me. My mama was so happy that she figured out a way to make a better life for me. She didn't understand why I wouldn't want to leave her. My mama only had me. I couldn't go away to a better life without her. I got an idea that maybe we could talk to the master and see if he'd let her go too if we didn't take him to court. My mama, at first hesitant, agreed she should try and talk to him. A few days later, she brought me the news that the master had agreed to let us both go free. He had heard about the court cases and understood what would happen if we did that. He didn't want anyone to know what he had done with my mama. So that none of the other slaves knew, we had to leave in the night and swear not to tell anyone about our freedom. The master met us at the corner of the plantation in the middle of the night and gave us papers saying he had freed us. My mama had heard about these papers and made sure ours were part of the deal. It was hard for my mama to leave all her brothers and sisters, but she wanted to do what was best for me. We made our way north and ended up in Michigan. We met some other free blacks who helped us find work and gave us a place to stay until we could get a place of our own. It was hard for me to find work. A lot of people wouldn't even consider hiring me because I was black, even in the north. I finally found a little corner store owned by another black man where I got hired. I started out just stocking shelves and cleaning, but after a while he let me work the cash register and I learned how to do math with money. My mama was able to read and write, so she taught me that when I was young. My mama made money helping look after the neighbors' kids when they went to work during the day. She helped the black couple with cooking and cleaning, and they paid her good for it. There was a house that Mama loved right down the street from us. She had always dreamed of owning a house like it. She acted like it wasn't that important when I tried to talk to her about it, but I knew better. We both started saving our money in a jar. Even though we never officially said what it was for, we both knew. The longer we lived in the North, the easier life got for us and all the other blacks. Finally, the government ended slavery. We were able to get in contact with my uncle and his family after they were freed, and they came to live near us. It made my mama so happy to have some of her family back together. When the next election came around, it was a big deal. Our neighborhood was mostly blacks, and this was the first time that black men could cast a vote in the United States. All of us who were of age went together on election day, and all the women cried as we walked down the street. We stood in line proudly, finally filled with hope that things could be different. One day I had to run an errand for my boss. He asked me to go to a town nearby and pick up some canned tomatoes. I had never taken a bus before, and I was not at all prepared for what I was about to encounter. When I got on the bus, there was a seat open about 3 rows back. I sat down and waited for everyone else to board. Most of the passengers were also black, but rather than sitting by me or anywhere around me, they all went as far to the back as they could go. I didn't understand it. Finally, a white woman got on the bus and immediately stared at me with an appalled look on her face. She asked me what the hell I was thinking, and I didn't know what to say. I knew that I had done something wrong, but I couldn't figure out what. The bus driver turned around and yelled at me to get to the back of the bus. Immediately, I jumped out of my seat without even comprehending what had just happened, and found a seat a few rows back. In front of me was more than 10 completely empty seats, but I wasn't allowed to sit in them because I was black. I thought about this day many times throughout my life, and I was never able to understand how this was right. Thankfully, a few months later, laws were passed that ended things like that. It was no longer acceptable to separate people based on their race. Shortly after I found out the laws had changed, I took a bus ride, just for the fun of it, and sat in the very front seat. Somehow Mama's dream house had managed to stay empty for years, and we finally saved up enough money to buy it. When we contacted the owner, he informed us that he wouldn't sell his house to no black folks. We didn't think that was right. We had the money he wanted, but that wasn't enough. Even in the North, where things were a lot better for blacks, there were still people who treated us wrong. Lucky for us, the Supreme Court decided that they agreed with us. Slowly it got harder for people to discriminate against blacks. Finally, many laws were passed that stopped the man with the house from keeping it from us. We told him that we were prepared to take him to court if he continued to refuse to sell us the house. Finally, the man gave in. We brought him our jar of money, and Mama proudly signed the papers saying the house was ours. Even though we would never forget what life had been like for us during slavery, Mama and I realized that we had finally gotten past it all and were living a happy life of freedom.